The tension between North and South Korea has taken a turn for the worse. Frontline troops are now in a quasi-state of war.
Meantime, clashes have erupted at one of the checkpoints at the Palestinian-Israeli border.
Deadly clashes along the Indian-Pakistani border have claimed more civilian lives.
Today, the president signing executive orders to direct money to start construction of his border wall with Mexico.
The way people talk about borders these days, it's like they were handed down from God. But most people don't realize how totally random, arbitrary, and erroneous they are. It's been a long time, if ever, that borders actually work. But there aren't actually a lot of people making an argument for a more rational approach to border issues. All right, today we're looking at Machias Seal Island. The class I teach here at Duke is on the U.S. border. How did it get to be the way it is? And Machias Seal Island makes a great case study because our border got formed through the same sloppy process that borders all over the world get formed, based on documents written when geography or knowledge of geography was still very inexact. So there's essentially a gap in the U.S.-Canada border in and around Machias Seal Island, something called the gray zone.
You're traveling through another dimension.
Machias stands out because it's the last piece of land that's in dispute between the United States and Canada. And it involves two countries that otherwise have the closest and best relationship of any two countries in the world. But once you've got vested economic interest at play, then things become exponentially more complicated to deal with.
Up and down the rugged New England coast, most any morning, summer or winter, you'll find hundreds of lobster fishermen like this one.
You go out of state and somebody mentions Maine. First thing comes to that person's mind is lobster. That's what Maine is known for and has always been known for, is lobster. They're delicious.
I've been a lobster fisherman all my life. Ever since about the age of 5, I used to go with my father on his little small boat. This is a picture of the Cutler fleet, most of it in probably around 1965. And there's 7 boats here. Now the town of Cutler has 45 boats with over 100 people employed in the fisheries. I love that picture. The second I saw it, I just fell in love with it and I had to have it. I didn't care if it was $9 million, I was going to buy it. If the lobster fisheries was to go downhill, this town would be in desperate shape because I would say 85 to 90% of the people in this town make their livelihood from lobstering.
And probably 70% of their income comes from the gray zone. That's a lot of money been made in that gray zone, but there's been a lot of money lost too. It's a hard area to fish. I want to say it's more competitive than it's ever been.
In the last, 15 years or so, the Canadians have come over there and fished the waters as well. They never used to before.
They just blasted all of the gray zone. They cut your traps off. They take your traps when they leave to go home, and your lobsters.
It is a problem. So I don't know what the solution is. I guess it's just going to have to go on the way that it is.
It's messed up. It certainly is. Whoever drew that line, I don't know what they were thinking, but there it is.
Creatures that people are fishing, they don't see these human-made political boundaries. Nation states are imagined communities. This is all imaginary. It just seems to be indicative of our times that there will be constant struggle over resources. And this has happened over and over and over again.
We've had people shot over lobster fishing conflicts, you know, and significant violence over lobster fishing conflicts where just one person didn't want another person fishing where they were. This is people's livelihood. They take it very seriously, and just the idea that somebody else might be, you know, messing with your gear or hauling your traps, taking your lobsters, it's basically like somebody walking up to you and taking money out of your wallet. And that's one of the reasons that there's problems in the gray zone.
Continuing coverage tonight of the lobster wars going on between Maine and Canada. Angry lobstermen in New Brunswick have moved their protests to the Office of Federal Fisheries in Fredericton, while Maine's congressional delegation is asking the U.S. State Department to step in.
It's too bad that we have to do this. We don't want to do this, but we have to protect ourselves. We have no choice.
Sovereignty, rights to the use of the land or water, is always a political act. It's always about politics. So territory, the concept itself, seems to get us in trouble time and time again.
Canadians can be very prickly when it comes to the United States for a variety of reasons. Mostly they feel that we take them for granted and ignore them, and they're absolutely right, we do.
They're not even a real country anyway.
I'll tell you another thing, their beer sucks.
And a lot of that drives Canadians nuts. So my impression is that the Canadians have been steadfast in resisting any kind of talks or any kind of setting that would even acknowledge there might be an issue here. Their position is, hey, we built a lighthouse on this in 1832. Where have you been?
Let's face it, lighthouse is one of the original 7 wonders of the world. Are they as important as they used to be? Perhaps not, but people just like lighthouses, period. People travel all over the world just for the sake of getting to see different lights. My name is Ralph Eldridge. I'm the lightkeeper on Machias Seal Island. As far as occupation goes, it's Canadian. It's the way it is. That's about it. We don't demand passports. Nobody gives us much in the way of bribes, so that doesn't work either. But as a government employee, I have nothing to do with policy. I just don't take it too seriously. I'm more interested in the human nature than I am in the politics of the whole thing. More fun to see how stupid people can be.
It's also the only place in eastern North America where if you pay enough money to the boatman, you can walk among puffins. I mean, you know, it's hard to beat that. I've been working on Machias Seal Island since 1995. I think it's the seabird island. The politics of the battling jurisdictions is something that it's unfortunate in that it distracts from the important scientific work, but that the important scientific work is going on anyway. My main interest is in seabird communities, not individual populations, but how the populations of different species get on together. It's got a lot of species on it and it's got good numbers, so a lot of people who come are very keen birders. There used to be one of the people bringing tourists was from the States, and he was aggressively promoting the idea this was not only an American island, but it was his own personal island.
Yeah, once again, in front of this sign, I declare this island belongs to the United States.
Barna Norton.
Barna Norton.
Barna.
Barna Norton has done this hundreds of times, for Norton is at war with Canada.
So this is your island then, huh? Yes, it is. It's left to me by my great-grandfather, Barney Beale.
Tall Barney is a legendary figure in Maine history. Apparently he was tall, 6'8", 6'10", and claimed Machias Seal Island was his. And apparently he had some rousing fights with various Canadian authorities over whose island this was, whose waters these were. And Barney, according to local lore, said that he would give the island to any of his descendants who were named Barnabas. So Barna is short for Barnabas, and so he claims to have inherited rights to the island through Tall Barney. He ran a boat tour out to the island for years and years, and every 4th of July he would take a group of people out to the island with American flags, land on the island and plant the American flag. His life was defending the claim to Machias Seal Island. I don't know exactly what Barna's agenda was, but he vigorously asserted that this was U.S. territory. In fact, it was his, and his son John carried that on for a couple of years after Barna died. So Barna's a very colorful part of all this. Machias Seal Island doesn't loom large in international relations, and like a lot of problems that don't, it therefore sort of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But why let an issue like this fester and potentially become an issue down the road?
The Trump administration said today that it would allow energy companies to drill for oil in nearly all the waters surrounding the continental United States.
There are oil and gas leases being let in the Gulf of Maine area.
Everybody's looking at all kinds of these deep water drilling sites, which we didn't really consider before. Once capital really enters in any big way, then you're always going to have a dispute.
My position is that we should resolve this dispute before we discover something valuable, which will make things a lot more complicated than it is now. This is the time to do it. Your job today is to solve this problem. You're making a recommendation on how you think this dispute should be resolved. So go to it.
That's why you're saying the issue of the gray zone hinges on Machias Seal.
I think if the U.S. loses, they'll bicker about it.
Whatever problems there are out there, they're just going to keep going on, and we'll have to just live with it, I guess. So, because I don't think there's going to be any changes.
I don't think you're ever going to see anything happen. It's just going to be the way it is, probably forever.
I think it was that both sides feel that they have a very strong claim to the territory, and so one side would be very unhappy.
The Canadian government is going to keep a manned lighthouse there as long as Americans say it's ours, to demonstrate that it isn't.
I expect the status quo for foreseeable future.
Do you think it should fly a lifesaver?
It's either like do nothing or just like establish some rules to like just make the situation a little bit better, you know?
Maintaining the status quo is always a policy option. So doing nothing sometimes is the best thing to do about a problem if your alternatives seem unrealistic. I don't like that. Again, getting back to where we started this conversation, we have these conflicted feelings about borders and mostly worry about them. What does it mean to be a country if your borders aren't clear? Borders are imaginary lines. So if we would recognize that as a country and as a matter of policy, we might obsess a little less over exactly where they are.
A little-known border dispute between Canada and the U.S. dating back to the 1700s is flaring up. In the last couple weeks, at least 10 fishing boats from New Brunswick have been stopped by U.S. Border Patrol in the waters around Machias Seal Island. Global Affairs says it is investigating the incidents in what it asserts are Canadian waters. The U.S. State Department has not commented.